Hello and welcome to another episode of Dead Throne. In this episode we're going to be talking about Defender, the core co-op mode. Now this mode can be played from 1 to 4 players, so it can be a solo if you want it to. The first thing you need to do after setting up the map and the box and everything else is locate this board. It's on back of one of the health boards and it's your scenario board. It's what you'll be using throughout this scenario. Now of course you need to pick out your heroes. They have to be heroes, you can't use Saladar. In this case I've got Rillick and I've got Tanyel. You grab their card trays and you grab their character cards as well. On the back you'll find the items that they start with. In Rillick's case he starts with one light boots, which I'll grab here, and you set up on your card tray. And put the character card under the card tray if you choose to. Each character also starts with 5 coin, 3 scrolls and 1 medallion piece. Any medallion pieces that aren't given to a hero are left out of the game. So in this case, each of us get 1 medallion piece and the remaining 4 are left out of the game. You can't buy them from the market or do anything else with them. Now I'm just going to set up Tanyel. Just like that. And after that, you need to set up the scenario board. So you need to grab 1 red stone, a green stone, and then 3 more stones. It doesn't matter which color. The red stone goes on the 10 of Agrimor's health, which is the bottom red bar. 1 of the green stones goes on the 1 of the XP bar, which is right at the top. And then the remaining 3 go at the 35 mark of the 3 town's health, which are the 3 middle bars, which are orange. Each player of course starts at any inn. I'm just going to put them both together, and you also need to draw the 3 enemy die, which are the blue, green and red die, along with the 2 normal wooden dice that you'll be using. The first die that you'll use is the green one. This is level 1. Level 2 is the blue and red is level 3. The 4+ rule and traps aren't used in co-op, and only the scroll cards and quest cards that have the co-op symbol on them can be used, or solo if you're only playing as 1 player. For this scenario there are a few terms that need to be learned. The first one is enemy die. That's the 3 colored die that we brought out earlier. Another is spawned enemy. That is any enemy that you have brought to life because of the dice roll of one of these enemy die. They will be standing on one of the card stands and they'll be moving around the land, but I'll touch more on that later. Another one is non-standing enemy. That's pretty much any other enemy that's found throughout the land. Any enemy basically that isn't on a card stand. The other one is point player. A point player is basically whose ever turn it is in the seating order. That is primarily used when you're talking about groups and group battles. Now that you've set up, what's the objective? Well, the objective is simple. You need to defend the towns and kill Agrimor. If any one of the towns gets destroyed, then you lose the game. Now, there are a few things to consider in Defender, and first of all I'm going to touch on the scenario board itself. Now, at the top, you've got your XP bar. Each time a player defeats a spawned enemy, an enemy that is walking around the land on a card stand, then you increase your XP up by inverse to the number of heroes. So if there are 4 heroes in the game, then you increase it up by 1. If there are 3, then it's by 2, and so on. Full list is over here. Now on the back of your Defender card, you've got your hero's XP. Each time you reach one of these milestones, so 10, 15, 20, it will give you an effect, and that works for all of the heroes. So for example, number 10, for 2 rounds don't roll the enemy die. That would be very beneficial. That gives you 2 rounds of time where you don't have to deal with any enemies or new enemies that might be spawning around the land. The second one is if you reach 15 on the XP bar, all players will fully heal. That is of course 1 time, they'll fully heal and that effect is over. That's how the XP bar works. The middle 3 are the town's health. So each time an enemy is inside a town, they can attack it. And when they do attack, the town's health will go down by whatever their attack is. If your town goes down to 0, then your town has been defeated and you will lose the game. Below that, you've also got Agrimor's health. Agrimor starts at 10 marked by the red region stone. Now each time you roll an AG+, which you can find on all of the enemy die, you will increase his health by the number of players in the game. So in our case we've got 2 players, so if I rolled that he would go up 1, 2 to 12. Now on the Agrimor's stats card, which is on the other side of the Heroes XP card, you've also got Agrimor's effects that he will unlock as he increases in health. So in this case he's gone up to 12. The first one, it says, can bypass summoned creatures to attack the players as normal. That's quite powerful. He will do you damage instead of attacking your creatures first. The next one after that is 15. Sets aflame the tile, causing 1 damage to every player on it upon interaction. So if he's on a tile and a player enters that tile, they will receive 1 damage regardless of where they are on that tile. So his health goes up and he also gains effects, so he becomes more powerful as the game goes on. So of course Agrimor is very powerful, and there are 2 ways he can spawn. One way is by reaching 23 on his health, and he will automatically spawn in the Waymarker in Stone C. The Waymarker is the blue stack of stones that you can see right here. Another way for him to spawn is by you rolling AG on the level 3 die. That's the red die. As soon as you roll that, he will spawn again on the Waymarker in Stone C. Now something in Defender that makes Agrimor a lot more powerful than before is that you actually have to kill him. Just defeating him isn't going to do it. You actually have to kill him, take his health all the way down to 0. Each time you defeat him, then you have to roll the level 2 enemy die, which is the blue one, and wherever that lands is the Waymarker that he will then spawn on. If you roll AG+, then simply roll again. His objective is to make it to the castle. If he spends 1 round in the castle, then he will destroy the castle and he will win the game and you will lose. If he's going through a town, then he will attack that town, but then on the next turn he will continue to move on as normal. Now let's talk about spawned enemy. So before each player plays their turn, they must roll the enemy die of the level they are on. Here are the level numbers, and in the beginning of the game you'll always start with green, that's level 1. As soon as you roll, it will land on a letter. That letter is the first letter of the tile's name. So in this, let's say I rolled an E, there we go. E, that means the enemy will spawn on the Waymarker of Town. If it was an R, then it would be Roakin, D for Deridian, W for Woodmist, and so on. The tile's name is on the tile itself, so you can find it like that. To spawn an enemy is simple. Every time you roll, you draw from the region that that tile represents. So let's say, for example, I rolled a G for Greylock. Greylock is in the Docks region, or it's one of the Docks regions, so of course you draw from the Docks deck. In this case, I drew on a Fank, and so all I do is grab a card stand, put the enemy in the card, and place the enemy standing on the Waymarker of Greylock. Each tile will have that blue stack of stones somewhere on one of the steps. You put the enemy card there. Now if you have rolled the enemy die and you draw anything but an enemy with an attack, they have to have an attack, then you simply put that card back on top and draw again. For example, if you draw an item or a lone quest or a mage or something like that, you put the card back on top and you keep drawing until you draw an enemy card. When the enemies have spawned, they will always try to move towards their closest town, because that's what they want to do. They want to go there and destroy that. In order for them to move, they will have to move after every other player. So after every other player has played, it is then the spawned enemy's turn to start moving about, and they will move equal to their level. So in this case, the Afank, he has a level 4, so he would go 1, 2, 3, 4. Take the same steps as normal. If he lands on another player, then it's pretty much the same as normal. They get the first attack, and then it's your turn to attack them. If, however, it's your turn and you land on them, then you will do the first attack. Getting rid of the standing enemies is pretty simple. As long as you do damage to them, you can get rid of them. But in order for you to gain XP from them, then you actually have to defeat them as normal, as in do more damage to them than they did to you. But in any case, as long as you've done damage to them, you can get rid of the card, put it back on top, and return the card stand. Now, as mentioned, enemies want to make their way to the town. So, if an enemy does make it into a town, they will stop on the first step of that town. For every turn that they are in the town, that town's health will go down by the equivalent of that enemy's attack. Doesn't matter how many, there could be multiple enemies within that town will lose health equal to however much attack of the enemies is in there. So in this case, this is Roakin, and let's say that it's now the enemy's turn, and the Afank is already in there, so the town will receive 6 attack. So find Roakin, move it down by 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that will happen on each enemy's turn, unless the enemy can be defeated. So let's say you've actually made it there, you go and attack him, and you manage to get rid of him. As we discussed earlier, you'll go back to the deck. Now that town has less health now, but if you want to repair it, then you can spend 20 coin, and for 20 coin you can repair it by 5. So let's say I've given the town 20 coin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the town's health can go back up. One of the advantages of doing battle within a town is that every player who is inside the borders of a town, so the walls, the rock walls, will receive an extra 2 attack. Now let's talk about groups, and I'll start with players. So 2 or more players can form a group, and all they have to do is be on the same step as each other. As soon as that happens, they can form a group and then they move as one. In order to move, however, you can only roll 1 die, and whoever turn it is considered the point player. The same seating order applies, so whoever's turn it is to move is considered the point player. They will roll, and they will also roll the enemy die as well. When you're in a group, your inventory kind of counts as 1, so you can carry as much as the group can carry in itself. Also, you can swap items around amongst yourselves, and this includes scrolls and lone quests. If you're the point player, and if your group discovers anything other than an enemy when walking around the land, then you as the point player interact as normal. If it's an item, you pick it up. Lone quest, then it's your lone quest to complete. But also, if you are battling enemies, then you as the point player will sustain any damage that is sustained. However, when you are as a group, your attack and defense is added up to become a total of whatever the group's attack and defense is. Players can leave the group at any point during their turn simply by rolling their own die, both of them, and running off and continuing by themselves. Now let's talk about enemy groups. So, as long as multiple enemies occupy the same step, then they are considered a group. Their attack and defense is added up, and you'll have to bypass that in order to defeat them. If they start their turn and they need to move, they're not in a town for example, then you move by the level of the highest level enemy within that group. So if one of the enemies in that group has a level 9, then you only move 9 steps. You move the entire group 9 steps. The last thing to touch on are the differences in Defender. Each scenario usually has some kind of differences, and these are the Defender ones. The first one is if a hero dies, or if a player dies, then they stay on the step that they died on. If they don't have a medallion piece to revive themselves, then they will simply stay there and wait for another hero to bring a medallion piece to them in order to revive them. As soon as a medallion piece has been used, then that medallion piece will go into the market and can be bought back for 50 coin. Medallion pieces can be moved around between the players however they like. It's like a normal item, but just remember that if you die and you don't have one, you have to wait there until someone brings you one. Another point is if you want to, you can have a non-player spawned enemy controller. This person's task within the game is pretty much to control the enemies and move them around however they like. They don't have to make their way to their closest town, it's up to them how they move their enemies. But just remember the objective of the enemies is to destroy the towns in order to defeat the heroes. And the last point to make is that you can make the game harder by simply spreading the towns apart. The further they are from each other, the harder it is to go over and try and protect them. And that's it. That's Defender.